Welcome back. At the peak of their fame first time round, Abba were more important to the Swedish economy than the Volvo motor car company. Are they about to do it again? Because, mamma mia, here they go again. 40 years after their last album, the legendary pop group Abba is back. The band delighted fans by unveiling 2 new tracks and announcing a new album titled Abba Voyage to be released in November. They are already going from strength to strength. They had 1 million hits on their YouTube channel within an hour. In less than 5 days, their official TikTok account has amassed almost 1 million followers. And the videos that they've posted, well, they've been viewed almost 30 million times. Now, almost universally, the critics say that the music has remained popular to this day. Their album, Abba Gold, was the UK's 20th best-selling album in the first 6 weeks of 6 months, of 2021, and recently became the first LP to spend 1,000 weeks in the UK top 100 album chart. Now, they'll also be launching a virtual concert experience next year in which digital versions of the Swedish pop icons will appear alongside a 10-piece live band. I'm delighted to be joined now by a dear friend of mine, UK artist manager Nick Stewart. Nick, when we were talking about this briefly yesterday, the first question I want to put to you is whether anybody other than Abba could have done this.
I think the simple answer to that, Alistair, and good afternoon to you and everybody else, is no. The Abba brand that has been superbly built up over the last 40 years, they have maintained their brand through compilation albums, through the musicals Mamma Mia, through 2 films. There's a very interesting quote in the paper this morning. Professor Nigel Nicholson, who's an evolutionary psychologist at the London Business School, says all successful bands intersect with the culture using sound appearance and an ethos that people can instantly relate to. What's happened, obviously, in the last 10 years, 5 probably, is that the sales of their catalogue have diminished with the rise of streaming, and they're not going to earn nearly as much money from the album Voyage through streaming as they would have done all those years ago, where they would have sold an enormous number of physical copies on CD and vinyl. So they've had to go on tour in order to really capitalize on the new music. New music, by the way, 2 new songs out. There's a ballad that Frida sings, I Still Have Faith in You, and then Agnetha on a real dance track, Don't Shut Me Down. So they're very typical ABBA songs. Everybody that has heard them says, great to have them back. The quality of Bjorn and Benny songwriting and production is still there. So now what they're doing is they're capitalizing on the new technology produced by George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic company, and it's being made at the moment under great secrecy in the East End of London. So this virtual tour is a very important thing.
Perfect timing, as you were describing. I don't know if you were watching it on an off-air monitor, but there it is. It's on the screen now, how they're making that George Lucas-style video. And it takes me to my second question, and that is, as you said rightly, the music is, on first tasters with the 2 singles, as good as it ever was. I mean, they are great masters and mistresses of pop music. But goodness me, either they or their management have really kept up with the communications technology, the Lucas stuff, the YouTube channels, all the rest of it. I mean, they know what they're doing, and there they are in their late 60s, early 70s.
Well, this idea, Alistair, has been around. I say idea, this concept has been around since Simon Fuller, who used to manage the Spice Girls, as you know, put it to them in 2016. It's taken 5 years to come to fruition. You're absolutely right. They have used all modern technology, TikTok in particular, the latest phenomenon they've done. But it'll be all over the radio. It'll be all over TV as well. So it'll be really interesting to see if they do actually sell a large number of physical product, because people still have CD players in their cars, they still have CD players, and obviously now there's a little renaissance in vinyl sales. So across the various platforms that are going to be used to sell this. It'll be very interesting to see exactly how many. I think they'll do extremely well. I can really see this album Voyage being number one at Christmas, and I can see it doing an enormous number of sales, physical and obviously streaming.
Is it also, as it were, a commercial factor? And Fuller is a very bright, switched-on cookie. We all know that perfectly well. That rather like the Rolling Stones, as you know, I'm slightly interested in, but £200 a time tickets. There are youngsters who go to see the Stones. My son thoroughly enjoyed it. But predominantly it's those with reasonable levels of disposable income who can afford that kind of thing. I guess we also still quite like buying physical CDs and indeed vinyl, now the biggest seller of all. That's going to help them monetize the return of their quality product.
Well, fourth quarter sales in the music business have always been based on present giving, gift giving for Christmas. So it's quite hard. It was always hard to give a sort of digital gift away. People like the physical thing, as you rightly say. It's quite interesting. Spotify tell us that the age group that plays ABBA are actually 18 to 24-year-olds. So it's right in that radio. It should be right in the middle of the Radio 1 Heart Magic Capital audience, and of course Radio 2 as well. So ABBA are one of those acts that completely. There are rock acts who only appeal to boys. There are certain pop acts that only appeal to girls. ABBA's music appeals to not only both genders, but a very wide audience. I can see 18 to 80 getting involved in this. And if the album is as good as the first two tracks we've heard, it's a very, very high quality album. They've had long enough to write it, you might say, but it is a very high quality exercise. There are two bands that could, going back to your previous question, it's always been one of the great things to try and get the original members of Supertramp to go out on tour. That would be a very big ticket. And possibly getting Morrissey and Marr to reform the Smiths. But there aren't many. I suppose REM could come back on the live circuit. They retired, but they could be perhaps persuaded. But this is way beyond that, really, because ABBA are right up there with the Beatles and the Stones, and it's a very rare. They're in very rarefied air.
Coward said. What was it Noel Coward said? You told me last night.
Oh, yes, there's nothing as potent as cheap music. A bit unkind, because actually I don't think... I think ABBA are way beyond that.
But I'll tell you, as my final observation, which again, you know, because we've talked about it, I have in my memory, burnt in there, an event about 20 years ago, when my then 15-year-old daughter took some girlfriends out for a birthday supper, and my wife and I knew that we had to get her back to school at a certain time, otherwise she'd be in trouble if she was too late. And ABBA album came on, and the girls and my wife rather, agreed, her mother, that they'd go round the block once more because they wanted to hear the end of the album. If you can sell something to my daughter and my wife, you're going to make a lot of money.
Didn't your daughter go on to be rather a well-respected, successful headmistress?
She did rather, yes.
Yeah, I thought so. No, well, there you are. That's a lovely anecdote and how it crossed the generations. And it will do very well. This will do very well. And it's big news. It's big news for the business. Bjorn and Benny may be slightly surprised by the lack of income they get off Spotify in terms of their songwriting, because that has changed. And it might be a bit of a wake-up call in terms of where we go with paying songwriters the right amount correctly. That's a debate you and I have had before, and it will be revisited over the coming months after that DCMS review that was held earlier in the year. But I think it's a joyful moment. I don't want to sound, I think it is a joyful moment to have one of the greatest groups, one of the greatest pair of songwriters, and two brilliant, if different, singers. This isn't the moment to go through what's happened in the last 40 years, but the four of them have undergone a certain amount of distress and unhappiness, and I hope this brings them back and gives us all a lot of joy at the end of this rather difficult year.
Note to end on. Nick Stewart, always a pleasure. I should point out we're not related, despite the fact that we share a surname. And I can also tell you, lovely people at home, that Nick will now hang up and race back to the cricket, because that's his other great passion.